and welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah, and today I have a review for the third book on my January TBR, and that is The North Wind by Alexandria Warwick. First of all, who even am I? Finishing 3 books off of my TBR in a row? This is unheard of, so I'm super excited about that. Now, before I get into a summary, spoilers, my thoughts, all of that stuff, I want to just say that I really enjoyed this book, and this might sound like I'm being critical, and I'm really not. There was really nothing special about this story, and I mean that in the best of ways. It was just a very typical retelling romance story, and I loved that. I wasn't really looking for anything like mind-blowing or different in this story. It was just very stereotypical, like books that I enjoy reading, and I have no complaints about that. So as always, I'll start with a very brief summary without any spoilers, and then I will go ahead and get into some spoilers of the plot and my thoughts on the story. So if you are planning on reading this, which I highly recommend, and you don't want it to be ruined, feel free to skip to the end of the video. So to start off with just a brief summary, this is very much just a Hades and Persephone, Beauty and the Beast style retelling. Ren and her twin sister Alora live in the village of Edgewood. Their town is kind of plagued by this eternal winter. The villagers are growing hungry, so are they, and it is time for the Frost King to choose a new bride. Ren switches places with her sister, so she is taken as the bride, and throughout most of the story she spends her time trying to plan the demise of the Frost King, the North Wind, and get back to her sister. But of course they end up falling in love and building a relationship, kind of saving everyone anyway. So that's kind of it for spoiler free. I'll go ahead and get into my thoughts. My first thought when reading this book is that Ren is like the most relatable character I've ever read about, because she loves cake, and I am a huge dessert person. Anyone who knows me knows that dessert is the first thing I consider when I am trying to decide what I want to eat, and I can always be called in as backup if you cannot finish your dessert. Always willing to help. So I definitely felt like Ren was my person. Okay, so as I said, there's nothing really crazy, like mind-blowingly different with this story. It's very much just a classic retelling. One of the things that is a little bit different though is the incorporation of the 4 winds. I can't really remember what they're called, but the North Wind obviously is the main focus of this book. West, East, and South winds as well. They are gods that have been banished to these different parts of the world for being involved in the uprising in the city of the gods. The North Wind, the Frost King / Boreas, he is very much like the Hades style character, so he is in control of winter, but he is also in control of the afterlife, so any souls that are passing on have to go through him. He has his different locations that he sends them to. You know, there's the peaceful meadow style area. There's the chasm where people are sent to be tortured if they were horrible people. And then there's this kind of group who made some poor decisions, and rather than kind of passing on to the afterlife, they're given the option to kind of work on his staff. So they're like specters kind of, and they're partially invisible at times, which is kind of interesting. So he's very much just like that Hades style character, very like dark and brooding. And Ren is very much like a Spitfire. So when he comes to choose his next bride, he initially chooses Alora, and Ren thinks like, I do everything that I can to protect my sister. I can't let that happen. She won't survive. So I'll just switch places with her. And that's what she does. So she ends up in the Deadlands. It's called, the kind of his domain, in his little, not really little, his big citadel that he lives in. And the whole time she's there, she is trying to figure out a way to kill him. So she can't kill him with a mortal weapon. She can kill him with a god-touched weapon. So her plan is all kind of revolved around getting her hands on that weapon so that she can kill him. So the reason that the Frost King needs a new bride is for her blood. That's cute. So there's this like veil curtain thing separating, I guess, the land of the living from the land of the dead. It's called the Shade, and there are holes that are forming in it. And these creatures called Dark Walkers, which are just like these nasty, shadowy creatures that feast on souls, I think, are sneaking out into the mortal realm. And so Ren is able to give some of her blood to the Shade to kind of heal up those holes a little bit, but it continues to get worse as the story goes on. And you also find out later on in the story that Boreas himself is turning into one of those Dark Walkers. He hasn't fully turned yet, but he the changes are becoming gradually worse, and so it's getting to the point where he might not be able to turn back into his like human form. We do get to meet his brother, the Eastwind. I believe it's pronounced Zephyrus. I have some thoughts about him. Anyway, he's kind of like the sweet, charming, like likable character who befriends Ren and kind of helps her out with this plot because the winter is creeping into his spring territory. So he wants his brother to do something about that, and he's kind of reluctant to. So he's willing to go to some pretty drastic measures to stop that from happening. As Ren learns a little bit more about Boreas, he was married before and he had a young son. They were trying to leave, and they were, or I think they were kidnapped. They wanted to leave, they were kidnapped, and then in the midst of like trying to go after them, they were killed by bandits, I believe. So he's you know, just kind of shut off, grief-stricken, like not very personable character. And so she really starts to learn that there's a lot more to him than just like the evil Frost King who's controlling the winter and making everybody starve. So of course, you know, she kind of helps him to like open himself back up to some of those feelings again. They of course fall in love and end up together at the end of the story. Part of Ren's character growth was kind of very stereotypical. You know, she was the character who always took care of everybody else, but now she's choosing herself. She's learning that she can put her wants above other people's wants because her sister, for example, was very upset when she switched places with her. Ren is able to go visit her sister Alora in Edgewood, and her sister's very upset that she switched places with her and tells her that she was selfish and all of this stuff, which of course Ren is very disturbed to hear because from her perspective, she spent her entire life making sure her sister was taken care of. And so she is learning that she doesn't always need to be taking care of somebody else, that it is okay to choose herself. So that's kind of the growth that occurs with her. And Boreas, as I mentioned before, he kind of, you know, opens himself back up to just feelings in general. And since he's this like Hades style character, of course he is passing judgment on these souls as they cross over. And he seemingly doesn't give a ton of thought to the whole character. Like, for example, if somebody ends up, if somebody killed somebody else, he seemingly doesn't consider why that happened. And you find out later that he does take that into consideration. Ren really encourages him to think more about why a person is acting the way that they are. So she comes from a background of being hungry and destitute and almost this willingness to do whatever she can, whatever she has to be able to survive. And so she's much more willing to listen to people and their reasoning behind whatever happened than Boreas is. She kind of helps him grow a little bit more in that way. So as Ren is plotting to kill her husband throughout the story, as I mentioned, she befriends the East Wind, Zephyrus, and he of course, manipulates her. First of all, he gives her a bow and arrow that is God-touched, which she could have used at any point in the story, and she never thinks about it until the end. And then he helps her sneak into a garden owned by Sleep and steal some poppies that he can use to make into a sleeping tonic. She plans to give the sleeping tonic to Boreas so that she can have him sleep, steal his dagger, stab him, you know, go back to her life. But as she starts to realize that there's not really much for her to go back to, like her sister's married, has her own life, she doesn't need Ren anymore, and Ren is starting to feel like she has a place in the Deadlands with Boreas and with these specters that are working throughout the Citadel as well. So she kind of distances herself from Zephyrus, but he finds her, gives her the tonic, and of course she and Boreas have this big confrontation where they she admits that yeah, she was planning to kill him, which of course he knew that, and they admit their feelings for each other, all of that stuff. So Ren and Boreas throw this giant party at the Citadel. They invite all of the specters to come. She invites her sister, and then Dark Walkers start attacking at the party, and everyone is very confused because the Citadel has like lots of wards and barriers placed around it. And Ren realizes that in her plans to try to kill her husband, she told Zephyrus about a hole in the wall. And so he has somehow managed to control the Dark Walkers and let them into the Citadel through the hole in the wall that Ren told him about. So of course she has a lot of guilt. But also, he kidnaps Boreas because he doesn't want to kill his brother. He just wants his spear, which is his like weapon of choice, and where he kind of harbors all of his power, so that Zephyrus can stop Winter from infiltrating his lands. He's kind of willing to do whatever he needs to get that spear and his brother's power. If Boreas gives his power away, then he becomes mortal. Zephyrus kidnaps him, takes him to a cave, and of course Ren goes to save him, and that kind of puts all of them in an awkward position because Zephyrus has already tortured Boreas. He's refused to give up his spear. Then he threatens to kill Ren if he doesn't give up his spear, and again, you know, everyone's well, not Zephyrus, he's not involved in this, but Ren and Boreas are confessing their feelings, and he says, you know, I'd willingly give it up to save your life, which he ends up doing, and but she's able to kind of like take the spear at the last minute and throw it at Zephyrus and kind of stop him from whatever he was going to do. So at the end, I guess this was one thing that was kind of different from most of the stories that have this similar nature, is that Boreas ends up giving up his immortality so that he can have a mortal, regular old human life with Ren. Typically it's kind of the other way around. One character gives up their mortal life to become some sort of long-lived thing. So Boreas gives up his power, he lets his brother go, and he and Ren are able to build a life together in the Citadel with all of the specters and happily ever after at the end, right? So I know that the second book in this series is going to be coming out very soon, The East Wind, so Zephyrus will be the main character in that. And I believe that one is going to be based on the Scottish legend of Tam Lin. I think it's Scottish. So I'm kind of hoping that with this next book, The East Wind, that Zephyrus will get his redemption story. Absolutely going to read it when it comes out. So highly recommend The North Wind if you've not read it. I know it's on Kindle Unlimited now. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!